Thanks for joining me. I'm Claire Harris, and this is a quick introduction to Tabletop English. I know that people have been wondering what is in these sets of activities and what exactly are the levels, so I thought I'd show you. Let's get started. These are interactive group work activities where learners ideally have to work together, support each other, have mini conversations. The activities are very much what I'm sure you'd create yourself, but I hope they'll be a time saver. And they were created for station rotation group work, but of course you can decide how you'll use them. Here you can see a list of the activity types for Tabletop English. I initially created these for pre-beginners and early beginners, but trialing suggested they were pitched a little too high for some learners. So that's when Starting Tabletop English emerged as a pathway to Tabletop English, with the same kinds of activities, but a little simpler. So here is set 1, picture cut-ups. As you reassemble the picture cut-ups, you get a sentence appearing at the top and at the bottom of the picture. You can see that the Starting Tabletop activity has shorter sentences, and you'll also see that for both there are also blank pictures for discussion or creating your own sentences, and separate cut-up word cards for more advanced review. These are the Starting Tabletop picture cut-ups. Where I live, they're all focused on reading and talking about one's neighbourhood and local facilities. Narrated by a single parent with a son, and you'll see that picture 1 has an alternative. The first is a small house, the second is a flat, so you can decide which is more appropriate for your learners. And picture 4 also has an alternative that doesn't say house. Don't worry, this is the only alternative in Starting Tabletop. Now, these are the Tabletop picture cut-ups, Dream Home, the different rooms of someone's dream home, because it may be easier for learners to talk about a dream home than about their current living situation. Set 2 are story cut-ups, where learners have to match the sentence halves. These started life as just text, but teachers suggested adding pictures to cut up and match, so the pictures are a little bit retrofitted. The coloured bands at the side of each page are different for each story, so the cut-up cards don't get mixed up. And again, you can see that Starting Tabletop is just a little simpler. Both the story cut-up sets are narrated by women. I will point out that set 12 features men, and each woman is talking about her life and her family situation. So Starting Tabletop has simple sentences with likes and dislikes, daily and weekend activities, but does also cover some issues like adult swimming lessons and people's feelings about pets that can lead to more discussion. And with Tabletop story cut-ups, here is the one other place where there is an alternative, because there are 2 versions of story 2. One where the husband is a FIFO worker and one where he's a truck driver. Again, you choose the most appropriate one. For my learners here in Western Australia, FIFO is a big thing. There are also other topics that can lead to discussion, as well as one member of the family being away a lot. Things like someone who's in hospital with a stress-related illness, someone with diabetes trying to keep themselves healthy. Those kind of topics that hopefully learners can start talking about. Set 3, make 4 sentences. This group writing activity was actually requested by Dorothea Malenti, who first asked me to create these resources. And the Tabletop activity is the one she suggested, but I've gone for a more supported writing activity with Starting Tabletop. And you can see also there are 2 activities printed on one sheet, and you can print on A3, of course, if you want them to be bigger. Here are the starting tabletop, make 4 sentences, which are really close. The focus is on present continuous, what people are doing. Running, fishing, painting, cooking. And here are the tabletop activities, still just present tense, but asking questions that need learners to share their ideas. What are they talking about? How is she feeling? And again, this is a joint writing experience, so learners are writing in a group and working out some sentences that share their ideas. Set 4, interactive board games with built-in dialogue. Set 4 has games with picture clues, but of course learners do have to be able to understand the dialogue in the centre. And you can see here that the starting tabletop game only requires learners to know one word, but the tabletop game requires the colour and the item. So here are the starting tabletop board games with picture prompts and the usual topics at this level, I would say. Colours and simple objects. Yeah. And then the tabletop board games are very similar, but they either will have a bit more complexity or a little more potential to extend the interaction, where you might say, what else would you like as well as a pizza? Anything else? These look the same. They are still board games, but this set 5 has board games with text prompts. And again, the starting tabletop is a simpler version. Tabletop is a little more complex. Here are the starting tabletop board games. They're generally very scaffolded. What's the letter before? What's the letter after? Although by the end, there is a more challenging activity. I'm going to the post office. Oh, why? And learners have to come up with an answer. Here are the tabletop text prompt board games. And again, as they go on, learners have to respond with their own opinions or ideas. Set 6, spelling, is really more about reading, listening and pronunciation as learners test each other with peer dictation of spelling pattern words. You can see again that starting tabletop is, of course, a little simpler. Starting tabletop is a match and spell activity with words that learners hopefully know, or hopefully someone in their small group will know or can work out from the picture. The tabletop words for Spelling Boss are a little more challenging, but they all fall into spelling patterns. This activity doesn't have to be done with any particular spelling program, it's just peer dictation, and again it's more about reading, listening and pronunciation, as well as awareness of those patterns. Set 7. What's different? I wanted to create a what's different activity, but with text rather than pictures. So for starting tabletop, the activities cover some of the different text types that learners may encounter, like a for sale notice, a school concert flyer, adult swimming lessons, offering the chance for more discussion yet again. As it's a group activity, the text may be a little more challenging than learners could read alone. But remember, they only have to find the differences. It's the same for tabletop. Here they have to find 7 differences. Different text types, hopefully those they will encounter, like an invitation, text messages, opening hours, a newsletter. And now going on to set 8. Memory match. This refers to the memory game that you may know as concentration or Pelmanism. This is where you turn all cards over face down and then the first player picks up 2 cards. If they get a pair, they have to read out the words and they keep the cards. But if they don't get a pair, They put them back in the same place. So at first it's all a bit random, but soon learners start to remember where the cards are and it becomes competitive. And of course there are answers, and you can appoint a table manager or volunteer to keep these. I would get learners to start by matching the cards first and then playing the game, and of course reading out the words when they get a pair. These are the memory match sets for starting tabletop: simple clock, signs, likes, prepositions. And these are the sets for tabletop, with some sums, greeting cards, sports centre notices, daily activities, text messages. Set 9 is an information gap exercise, so either learners can play in pairs or two aside, with a little coaching to make sure they don't look at each other's cards. As with all the activities, if you laminate the cards, you can use wipe-off markers. And they ask learners to write prices, numbers, or simple words, plus do some very simple drawings. Now, I have just noticed that some of the starting tabletop cards have a red centre and some a blue centre. I need to fix that. The first few have only writing, and then they progress to drawing. So if you haven't done these before, learner A is asking what's in square A2, and then learner B will tell them, and then learner B will ask what's in square A1, and learner A will tell them, and so it goes on. Finally, at the end, they compare their cards to see if they look the same. And here are the tabletop write and draw cards, a little more complex and with more squares. Set 10 quizzes have a little interactive element still, where learners take turns to read the questions and ask everyone else, what's the answer? And other people give their answer and say, what do you think? And you can see there are just 7 questions for tabletop, 7 questions for starting tabletop and 10 for tabletop. So you can see that the starting tabletop quizzes are a little more visual, and the tabletop quizzes are both visual and text-based. Set 11, no clue crosswords. These help literacy learners to be aware of how many letters are in a word and in what order. There are clues, but not enough to make it too easy, I hope. Now, these have all been trialled, of course, so I am confident that learners will be able to do them happily. So starting tabletop. The topics here are opposites, body parts, numbers, days. And then with tabletop, there are topics like clothing, transport, colours, stationery, weather. And finally, set 12, cut-up conversations. These are a little conversation between 2 people for learners to reassemble. Starting tabletop has conversations with Adam, a student who lives at home with mum, dad and sister, has a part-time job, goes to the dentist, is late for his appointment, etc. Tabletop has conversations with Sam, who is married with kids, working, going shopping, at the doctor's. It's all very domestic. So that's all for the activities, but you may have wondered, how do I introduce them to learners? And here again, community teachers who didn't have a projector asked for something for front of class display. So these giant activities can be printed on A3, and then you can stick them on the wall or on a board and demonstrate how each activity works. There's one for each activity set at both levels. Now, I know you'll all be expert at making your own activities, but if you want to make some that match the tabletop activities, you can use the templates. They're in PowerPoint and Keynote. That's it. Thank you for watching. I hope that was useful. I do plan to make some more videos looking at the activities in more detail. But for now, please download the samples from the PayHip page and try them out with your learners. Thanks so much.